Hey everyone, this is the Love of Cinema podcast. We like to talk movies. If you like to talk movies too, you come to the right place.
I used to say you have to push the envelope from within the envelope. You cannot go outside the envelope and push it. A Yash Chopra never showed regressive stuff, as far as I remember, about his women. Zoya Akhtar, of course, doesn't show any regressive, but she's pushing the envelope by showing her a typical thing and then pushing it. So if you say that there has to be an element of the good, then the good is you are pushing, you are telling a lot, hundreds and thousands of guys about how you should be treating your daughters and how you should be looking at your sons.
An affluent dysfunctional family goes on an elite cruise. Zoya Akhtar's third feature film is a comedy drama that feels as fresh as a rose while taking on tropes and tackling issues as old as the hills. Dil Dhadakne, though, puts the fun in dysfunctional. But it also lays bare many serious matters of culture and society that need to be checked. This is Himanshu, and you're listening to the Love of Cinema podcast. But before moving on, an important reminder. If you enjoy organic conversations centered on Indian cinema, Love of Cinema podcast was created for people just like you. So if you enjoy the podcast, please do consider supporting the show. Love of Cinema podcast is my labor of love. And with every episode, I've attempted to create something that cinephiles will continue to find value, not just today, but over time as well. If you find value in the conversations on the pod, please do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content with shelf life for fans of Indian cinema everywhere. You'll find the link to support the show in the show notes. You can also support the show directly from the podcast website. It's fast, it's easy, and your support is greatly appreciated. Also, if you like the episode, please share the episode on social media, as that will help other people discover the pod. Coming back to today's episode. To help us unpack the fun as well as the serious bits from Dil Dhadakne, though, I'm delighted to welcome Vanita Kohli-Khandekar on the pod today. Vanita is a media specialist who has been tracking the Indian media and entertainment business for almost 2 decades now. She is also the author of 2 books, including The Making of Star India, the riveting story of Rupert Murdoch's India operations. Dil Dhadakne, though, is a favorite film of hers, and Vanita also happens to be a big Zoya fan. Vanita and I had a blast chatting about the Mehra family, the writing of the film, its interesting ending, and all other things Dil Dhadakne, though. Here goes. Hi, Vanita. How are you doing?
Hi, Himanshu. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. First of all, thanks for coming on the podcast. And I'm really glad that we chose a film that not only both of us are fans of, but a film that is by one of our favorite filmmakers, if I may say so.
I love Zoya's work. Yeah, I've liked her work. I don't know. And I've heard her speak also at a couple of functions, industry dues. So I quite
Right.
like her stuff. Yeah.
Yes, big fan of Zoya. And let's dive right in. So, in my opinion, Dil Dhadakne Do is an interesting film because, come to think about it, it's got more in common with the films of 70s and 80s mainstream Hindi cinema than you would initially think of. But at the same time, it's a very fresh film. And what do I mean by that, right? So, if you think about it, the film for the most part segues from one cliched Hindi cinema trope to another. Tropes like romance between 2 people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, Kabir and Farha. Tropes like a rich family not allowing their daughter to marry the son of their employee, like Aisha and Sunny. Or a trope like a woman who knows that her husband's a womanizer, but still continues to be in the marriage.
Mhm.
Or a father who craves career success for his son, all the while being, next to indifferent to his daughter's success in his career. But all of that is happening in affluent, dysfunctional family, masquerading, behind a charade, so to speak. That's in place to keep intact their perception in their circles. And I think at one point, Kabir exasperatingly says that, at the Mehra household, इस घर में सब ऊपर ऊपर से बात करते हैं, असली बात तो कोई करता ही नहीं. Now you take that family and put it on a cruise. Essentially, that's what Dil Dhadakne do is. And that's a lovely idea. I mean, it's just a gangbusters idea.
Agreed. So I don't, if you ask me to pinpoint that one thing which I like, or break it down, I'm not sure how much. The reason I like Dil Dhadakne though is the same reason that I like, let's say, Yash Chopra's films. They tackle emotional issues, they tackle social issues without getting into, and Yash Chopra, let's remember, has done Diwar and has done Kala Patthar. Okay, so it's not that he's not set films in poverty, but he tackles the emotional issues of, or let's say, higher level needs in many ways, if I may put it, which is not a fair thing because poor people also have emotional issues. But he tackles them with a sensitivity, and that's what Zoya is doing. What she is doing is she's talking about patriarchy, and it's exactly what Rocky or Rani does. Rocky or Rani ki prem kahani is about patriarchy versus matriarchy, and the patriarchal person is a woman. Correct? What has happened in Dil Dhadakne though? The patriarchal woman, Anil Kapoor, of course, is patriarchal, but Shefali Shah is also patriarchal. Her character, Neelam, is also patriarchal. So, see, when you're talking to me like this, I'm breaking it up. But emotionally, why it attracted me? Of course, I love that setting. Okay, I love the people
Right.
living vicariously. Okay, I loved Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. It was a lovely, lovely slice of life film, and but more, and Carlos Catalan's photography is to die for in that film. Similarly, this is a beautiful film. I know that it is very good to sneer at things which are rich and about rich people's lives, but I think it's just such a lovely film. I lived so vicariously on that cruise, and I was looking at, okay, this is the kind of rooms people live in, this is the kind of food they eat, this is the countries you could go to on a cruise. I mean, I would never have, I can't go on a cruise of that scale. I might go on a Janta cruise, but the point is, it was lovely. It's a beautifully set up film, but it is about emotions that you, I, anybody could have. I'm sorry to say this, but I've lived through some of that. My father, God bless his soul, he's no more, and I loved him dearly, but he forced me to do a BCom and an MBA. I never wanted to do it. But I can understand what Aisha is feeling when her father says that you go off to the US to start, sends off this guy to the US, gets this girl married off. That was for different reasons. In my case, but that thing and I'm from a Punjabi family which grew up in Bombay. So I can relate to some of that thing of, daughters are loved and all, but the sons are more important. So if, let's say, if three people come home and one of them is a girl, she will heat the food. The boys will not heat the food. I don't know how it happens in Maharashtrian homes. My husband is a Maharashtrian. That doesn't happen in my home, at least. But so, lot of that, those little things, now that I think of it when you're talking to me, and I've seen that film, I think, more than half a dozen times. Okay. So, and I love to see, I've seen Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, I think maybe a dozen times. So my favorite movies are movies which I can watch again and again and again. And especially, that typical thing of going to your favorite scenes, quick fast forwarding to your favorite scenes. So I think I love so if I was to break it down to two or three things, it's a beautiful movie. It's a very pretty movie, and it's pretty in good taste. It's not tacky.
It's great to look at. Yeah.
It's great to look at. That money which has been spent on the movie, I know it didn't do very well commercially at the box office, has been spent really well, tastefully. B, it talks about emotions which I can relate to, and with actors and people and stories which I can relate to, and which I wanted to, even in a Kabhi Kabhi, when that adopted daughter's trauma, or the Rishi Kapoor's this thing with it, those are things you can relate to. How does an adopted child feel about themselves? If you pair the luxury out of the film, and that film is in the 70s or early 80s, if I'm not mistaken. Those kind of homes were not normal in India at that time, So it was another world of mother and a son are sitting and sipping tea and doing high fives. That was not done in India, in the India of those days. So it is That is also a beautiful film in many ways, but it tackles emotions that you want to see them tackled and gives you some guidance. It's, I always say that, and this is where I used to defend the case serials a lot, much to the irritation of my co-editors. I used to say you have to push the envelope from within the envelope. You cannot go outside the envelope and push it. A Yash Chopra never showed regressive stuff, as far as I remember, about his women. Zoya Akhtar, of course, doesn't show any regressive, but she's pushing the envelope by showing her a typical thing and then pushing it. So if you say that there has to be an element of the good, then the good is you are pushing, you are telling a lot, hundreds and thousands of guys about how you should be treating your daughters and how you should be looking at your sons and mothers. I'm sorry, a lot of Punjabi mothers I've seen. I don't know Maharashtrian mothers kaisi hoti hain, but this son obsession, mera beta, mera raja beta, so a lot of that touches me. Sorry, I went on a bit.
No, no, absolutely. No, so do you think Manav's mother is right on the money there with the character?
Oh my God, she's something else. And Zarina Wahab has played her pitch perfect. She's so good. So good. In fact, Madhav, Rahul Bose's character is Manav, sorry. I remember him, of course, that famous argument between him and Farhan in that bar after Galla Gudiyan. But I remember him also because I've seen guys like this in real life. I've seen mums like this in real life. And I've seen dads like this in real life.
Right. That I mean, we will talk about that character more. But Vanita, let me ask you this. So let's go back to when you watched the film for the first time, right?
Okay.
If you can recall, which was the character that jumped out and spoke to you the very first time?
As a character and for sheer performance, there are two different things. So as a character, the character which jumped out and spoke to me most was Aisha. That woman who's never acknowledged for her achievements. And that's the story of many Indian women. They're not acknowledged. I cook a good, I'm not talking about myself, but, I cook a good meal, it gets acknowledged. But I achieve something professionally. I don't know how many people understand what all a woman juggles to reach that. I'm not saying that a man doesn't do it. I think it's very unfair. Too much of the focus on social correctness comes on to what we are doing for women. But I think equally, women need to train better sons if they want a world where everybody is treated equally. So that character really spoke to me. In terms of performance, I think Ranveer was fantastic. Shefali, of course,
absolutely. She killed it.
She's always dependable. And Anil, because Anil has played that character so often, you don't give him credit. But that hearty Punjabi, those. And I don't know if you agree, but I think the supporting cast was fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah. A young Vikrant Macy and all those, they were great.
That Noori, Parmeet Sethi, that couple, the Chachi, Chacha, those nieces who says, aapki performance dekhne ke baad main aur kahan jati? And she comes and sits in the bar.
Yeah. Even that little kid, right? I mean, the little kid the one with the glasses. I think she is. Yes.
Yeah. She's like, and the mother who's telling her daughter, you wear something revealing. How will you ever get guys if you wear clothes like this? So they are all. I love the support, and I think the supporting cast. Manoj Pahwa is there, of course. And he's superbly dependable, and I also see these people never get enough credit. Talking about credit.
Going back to Aisha, which is Priyanka Chopra's performance. I'm a big fan of that character and that performance. And I think that's such a great character because, is someone who's ambitious, successful, but in a bad marriage, right? She's not in a happy place. We know that. Someone who wishes for her father's recognition. She and her husband, Manav, make an odd couple. We also know that because it's apparent through visual cues. Like there's starkly contrasting wardrobes. There's next to zero chemistry between them. And Aisha harbors a deep sense of frustration and anger towards Manav, which sort of manifests in that pickleball game between them, where Aisha crushes him figuratively and literally.
And he's looking like, what happened? What did I do?
So that's a great character coupled with a great performance. Priyanka Chopra also, like you said, always a dependable actor. That's such a central character because I if you ask me, like Anil Kapoor and Shefali Shah are the anchors, of the
Mm,
film,
mm.
but Priyanka Chopra's Aisha is such a pivotal character because that's the character whose life is going to crack open this kind of Pandora's box, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah. Uh, Himanshu, the thing about also Aisha and Manav, since you brought it up, it's not that she says, na, Zarina Wahab says, when she says, I want to separate or divorce, she says, तुम्हें मारता है, तुम्हें पैसे नहीं देता है. I mean, this is a successful businesswoman. She's not traumatized physically in any way. So it's not that he's been mean to her. So there's not, so, that thing of explaining to people that don't, I'm not in love with this guy. So how do you explain? And people spend decades in marriages like this. Tell me how much hope it gives someone who's in a. I'm not saying your husband should have beaten you or slapped you for you to want a divorce. You could simply be, and it could equally be for a man who's terribly unhappy, who's not found his life partner, and you don't want to break it up for whatever reasons, like she doesn't want to break it up because she doesn't want to break his heart and whatever. And eventually she comes to a point where she says, boss, I cannot live with this. This is a lie. And I think Sunny's coming triggers that in many ways, of course. So that's there. And I think Farhan has played Sunny with the right amount of masti and this thing.
he's
But
perfectly cast in that.
perfectly cast. Uh, but the thing about there's nothing ostensibly wrong with this marriage. Yet I want to leave it. And her parents' bafflement with what is the problem? Is he having an affair? Are you having an affair? I mean, just they can't get it. And I think that is such a lovely thing to showcase there, especially given how we are in India. In the US, this is a far where you sit, or in many European countries, a far easier way to say that I don't get along with you and I'm not happy with you and I want to live separate. In India, you can't say that easily. It's difficult.
Yeah, that's a great scene. I mean, with Manav's mom, and a
Mom.
drama that she does, where she threatens self-harm with a butter knife and all that.
And Ranveer,
Yeah, and Ranveer really
auntie
takes
is the name.
it. But I mean,
That's
what's
really funny.
glaring in that is her disconnect, not just with her daughter-in-law, but with the times, right? I mean, she's a really old-fashioned woman.
Mm-hmm.
And she's someone that when she learns her daughter-in-law is not happy in her marriage, like you said, one of her
Huh.
first questions is whether it's because her son doesn't spend enough money on her.
Money on.
And because she thinks that probably that could be a reason why the marriage is not going well. But I
Although
mean,
she's
I mean, we shouldn't like laugh at her, but because she comes from a very different
different, yeah,
generation,
absolutely.
very different times.
Yeah. She also stops her daughter-in-law from discussing work at the dining table. If you remember that scene where Ranveer has gone to Bombay for some work, Ranveer's character, Kabir, and something, and she says, something about investors, some business conversation comes up, and mother-in-law immediately, fulka leke aana ya sabzi ya tumhe, something she does not want, or she talks about how she used to be shy talking in front of her in-laws. If I remember correctly,
Right,
that's what
right.
she does.
Yeah, yeah. That I mean, the whole Manav's mom's angle is really well placed because it
Yes.
shows it shows that disconnect really well.
Mm.
And speaking of the women in the film,
Mhm.
I absolutely love Shefali Shah as Neelam. Like you said, just an actor that who owns pretty much every role that she's offered. So we
Yeah.
already know that she's a great actor. But she's so convincing as that super conscious, high net worth housewife from a Delhi business family,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and in
Slightly bitchy,
it's
you
like
know, bitchy,
yes,
and
yes,
like,
and she has her insecurities and she's living with them.
mm,
And a couple of scenes in particular, Vanita, that I wanted to talk about. One is where she we see her standing in front of the mirror, and
mm,
she's in an act of emotional eating. Right, it's a mechanism of dealing with
correct,
stress.
correct.
She's eating that chocolate cake in front of the mirror. After she sees Kamal flirting with that Turkish woman, and
Huh,
that's a great scene because there is no dialogue. There is
nothing.
absolutely nothing there. We know what she's going through, but the
Mm,
way that she portrays that as to the hell that she's going through,
mm,
and the kind of stress levels that it has, kind of cranked up because of her husband's behavior, It's tremendous. I mean, it's
Phenomenal.
a
I agree.
hallmark of a great actor.
I agree. I totally. In fact, some of the scenes between the husband and the wife are, like in the bedroom, she tells him, "Abhi yahan to koi dekh nahi raha hai, tum kyun dekh?" So, it's like a slap on the face to him because she knows about his peccadillos and she's ignores. So why are you pretending that you love me? And I would hate to be in that space emotionally. I've never been touchwood, but just she's portrayed it so well.
Absolutely, yeah. She has killed it. I think I'm a big fan of Shafali Shah. I
Mm,
loved her in almost all her films, and even here, I mean, she's nothing short of excellent. And same with, I mean, Anil Kapoor. I mean, like you said, I mean, he's done this shtick before, but
mm,
he plays that character to the T. He's a typical patriarchal business family head of a household.
mm,
He's
mhm,
someone who craves acceptance and recognition of his son in his
mm,
career,
mm,
all the while being almost not concerned with or appreciative of his daughter's existing success, right? I mean, she's very successful. She's running her own company, but he's pretty much like he's almost like oblivious to it. And because he pretty much considers his daughter as an ex-member of the Mehra family, right? Someone who now belongs to her husband's family.
mhm.
So, that thing is always there. We see that. And eventually it's a great relief that, he finally, kind of puts his foot down, when he kind of grabs Mano by his neck, when
Mm,
Mano tries to like, manhandle her and say, let's get out of here or something.
mm.
And so it's great to see him stand up. But until then, he's pretty much like, he's done
Yeah,
his
yeah,
daughter wrong.
yeah. He's done his daughter wrong, and also you pointed out most of the things in his character, and Anil has brought them out very well. But one more thing, he's also very, and I have seen hundreds of men like this, some of them from my own family, who will be beating their chest about what they've achieved. I'm a self-made man, and I did this, and I had nothing when I came to Bombay, and when I came to Delhi, and da 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 da, which is very good. It's not to take away from, but let others say it. He's constantly beating his own drum, if you remember, and when he's telling his son to shape up his act, he knows his son doesn't have the capability, and his son also knows he doesn't have the capability, but he still chooses to ignore the fact that it is his daughter. It's a bit like in Dangal, if you remember, where Amir wants Bhogat wanted sons, and तीसरी बेटी के बाद I don't know how many daughters he had, and when his daughter, as a youngster, 10 or 12-year-old must be, she punches a guy, it hits him that what is wrong with me? This woman can equally wrestle as well as a guy. It's like in Gunjan Saxena, Pankaj Tripathi tells his daughter, na, कि plane लड़का चलाए या लड़की चलाए, है तो वो पायलट ही ना, जो भी है. और रॉकी और रानी अगेन, कि हुनर का कोई जेंडर नहीं होता. Right? You remember that Chandan Chatterjee says, and that thing, I mean, this movie said it so much. Uh, they built up Aisha's story and Mehra's story and have said it. इसमें कोई gender की बात ही नहीं. She has the business chops. And I also think one of the things is, I don't know if you think realize this, Himanshu, हिंदी फिल्मों में ना कभी औरतों को business woman बहुत कम दिखाया है. They'll be doing a job, they'll be successful at a job or something, but business खड़ा करके और
As an entrepreneur, yeah.
as an entrepreneur ये बहुत कम. अब business उनका क्या होगा, लड्डू बेच रहे हैं या डब्बा बना रहे हैं. No, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with लड्डू बेचना या डब्बे बनाना, but I'm saying बहुत जो आपण ते मराठीत म्हणतात ना घरगुती, that kind of businesses when a woman does, we feel very proud of her. But when she's hard as nails and does very well in a hard world, we somehow are very uncomfortable as a society that, oh, she must be very aggressive, she must be very manipulative, she must be this, she must be that. I don't think they show Aisha as like that. But Aisha must have also stepped on many toes to reach where she did. I can't imagine her having a smooth journey and keeping
Absolutely.
everybody happy. That's not how entrepreneurship is. Of course, they've not shown that character arc that way. It's this is a successful businessman's daughter who herself now has a successful business and is independent of her father. So I that was, to me also, that also stayed in my head, I think.
Yes, yes. And before we move away from Kamal, I just wanted to say that one more thing. I mean, he's also very self-centered, right? I mean, not only is he,
Exactly.
blowing his own trumpet, but he is also very self-centered. And there's one scene that kind of, exemplifies that, which is, I remember that scene where he's in the hospital, right? And his wife
Yeah.
walks in and he says, "Do you know what I've been through?" And he's just there because he has gas, so it's not even a heart trouble or anything like
That
that.
hospital scene is something, man. I loved it. है ना? It is like the film comes crashing down on its own,
It
on
is it's a
the
pivotal scene.
all conflicts.
It's a pivotal scene, and that I think kind of cracks it open afterwards too. So it kind of takes a different arc from there. Vanita, let's talk about Farha, Anushka Sharma's character. So
Oh
the
yeah.
way I saw Farha and Sunny, these two characters, they are very different, right? I mean, they are essentially, first of all, they are sorted, and they come from a very different strata, right? From the one that the Meras belong to. Farah is she's very sorted, she's independent, she knows what she wants in life and goes for it, willing to leave behind her conservative family, like she says, for her dreams, her goals, to lead the life that she dreams of. And I think the only two sorted people in that movie are Farah and Sunny. And like I said, both of them come from different backgrounds. They come from a strata where everybody routinely kind of has to make tough choices, right, in the course of their lives. They're fighting, but the battles that they're fighting are completely different from the ones that are being fought by someone that belongs to the strata of the Mehra family. So there's a huge, spasm between those two people, right? They come from a completely different worlds. And I thought that's why I thought that those two characters, they are kind of, they kind of lend a bearing to this because this Mera family is something else. And of course, there are people like that. But, most of us come from the strata that Farah and Sunny come from.
I am not fully in agreement there with you, Himanshu. The battles that, let's say, a Para has fought, or the battles that Kabir, no, sorry, Sunny has fought, Farah and Sunny are fighting the same battles that Kabir and Aisha fought, but they have fought those battles earlier. So it's not that they are not, because of their class, they had a different set of battles. Of course, they might have monetary battles, which these two don't have. So Farah is eking out a living as a dancer on a cruise ship. But she's dancing, and that is her joy and her passion. So she's living the life she wants, and she's eventually building towards a better future. But she has fought that battle which Kabir has to fight with his family now. She has already covered that ground, and her coming in Kabir's life makes him want to now finally fight that battle. Similarly, Sunny's coming in Aisha's life makes her want to tackle. She tells him, "Tum mera intezar karoge?" See, Sunny also gets hope from the fact that Sunny is not beholden that way. Now he's financially free. He tells her that I could not ask for your hand because I had nothing. I was your father's manager's son. मैं तुम्हारा हाथ कैसे मांगता? You know how, I mean, he didn't use that line. I'm using it. I'm probably too influenced by old Hindi films. हाथ कैसे मांगता है और but, but the point is, her parents managed to push him off to America to study, and they separate the two because they see them getting close. And she's married off to a rich guy. But he comes back, he's sorted, he's successful, and he's now free to ask her for her hand whether or not her parents like it or not. But she's married, so he doesn't do anything. When he learns that the marriage is about to break or marriage has broken, is when he's very happy to step in. But those battles, whether it's a battle for money or to achieve something, or it's a battle to do what you love, they have they have done those battles and entered these people's lives. Sunny did it in front of her. Farah has done it before she met Kabir. So that's where I would differ from you. And the catalyst for Aisha and Kabir's life is these two coming into it.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I see where you're coming from.
Hmm.
I totally get that. Speaking, since you brought up that scene about, kya tum mera intezar karoge, and Sunny says, hamesha ke liye.
हाँ.
Here is a common critique that Zoya Akhtar and Farhan Akhtar have to fans off. And that's, they both write in English, right? I mean, they write the dialogue in English, and it's later translated to Hindi. And, I think, especially in this particular movie, it kind of shows, and sometimes in not so good way, because, like, I'll give you a couple of examples. And, it makes sense as to what those translations are. But, I just feel that they're a little literal translations. They're like a little bit on the lazier side in terms of the translation. So, for example, that particular scene, right, when Aisha is leaving on the lifeboat to bring back Kabir, she asks Sunny, mera intezar karoge. So essentially, in English, that works because she will say, will you wait for me? And he says, hamesha ke liye, which doesn't that really, it doesn't sound too right. But I mean, it's essentially the translation of forever, I will. So, that's one example. And then there's one more example where, and I think there are a couple of instances of this same line, where I think Aisha says the ye kya tha? And it essentially is the translation of what was that. So it doesn't sound too,
I would have thought that somebody who can think in Hindi or Urdu would be doing the writing. I wouldn't have thought that they would make do something
exactly.
as basic, get something as basic as this wrong.
So my wife made an
I don't
interesting
know.
point. Yeah, I agree with you. But my wife was saying, she said, some of those people in like South Bombay or, maybe even in Delhi, they do actually talk like that. Because in their head, they're translating, like English to Hindi or English to Marathi, and that's how they speak. So
No,
it kind of
I
sounds
would
like
beg
that.
to differ on South Delhi. I'll beg to, because I lived in South Delhi.
They speak proper Hindi.
Most South Delhi people, their English is terrible. I'm sorry. Okay? You get them to speak in English. I'm from Bombay. I've lived in Delhi for the last 18, 20 years. I love the city.
Right.
Both the cities. But South Delhi people don't speak very good English. I'm sorry. They don't. Some of them might, but not all of them speak very good English. Their English is very tainted with Punjabi accents or whatever. And in Maharashtra, it's tainted with the Marathi or whatever accent that you have. So I don't know if they think in English because they have a very Delhi attitude to things. So I don't think.
You don't think that's it? Okay.
That's anyway.
Right.
But this is a thing of perceptions and subjectivity. It's like Ranveer did a lot of training of the character for Rocky or Rani by meeting influencers and people in Delhi. He spent I don't know how many months. That's what Karan was saying in some interview with Anupama. That that's how he trained for that character. So the fact is that you do pick up stuff. In this case, I don't know the backdrop of how they wrote and shot this film, Dil Dhadakne.
Right, right. And, the difference is palpable because these dialogues are written by Farhan Akhtar, except the dialogues for Pluto Mehra. Those are written by Javed Akhtar. And, that essentially flows like poetry, right? I mean, it's social commentary in verse. So it's.
Oh, I loved that character. And it was so long after the film I realized this was Amir Khan's voice. And I still can't believe it's Amir Khan's voice. It is so unlike Amir Khan's voice. But I love that character. What does he say? Itni nafrat.
So I love the very last scene. It's very it's like vintage Javed Akhtar. I think he says सिर्फ मोहब्बत ही काफी नहीं है, जिसे मोहब्बत दी है उसे आजादी भी देनी होगी, अगर कोई अलग तरह जीना चाहता है तो उसे जीने दो, हर दिल अपनी ही तरह धड़कता है, हर दिल धड़कने दो.
Lovely, lovely.
So, those lines are really great. And there are more. I mean, I have some, I've written this down, so I'm not recalling this from memory.
No, that's
But
okay.
it's, और क्या हुआ अगर हमारे चारों तरफ समुंदर ही समुंदर है, क्या हुआ अगर हमारी कश्ती छोटी है, बड़ी बात यह है कि हम साथ हैं एक दूसरे के लिए, और क्या चाहिए. And it's such a nice note to end the film on.
Totally.
But going back to what I was saying, that yeah, you can tell the difference between the dialogue that's written by Javed Akhtar and
Yeah,
of
maybe
course,
you have a point.
yeah, and I mean it's unfair to compare even Farhan Akhtar's dialogue writing with or anybody's dialogue writing with Javed Akhtar's.
But
So
this ending that you talked about, and this is typical Zoya now. In Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, I think she had to reshoot the thing. I think that's what she had to shoot that song to show in the ending to her. So she does these endings where she doesn't give you closure. So
right,
these guys are
right.
going in this sport, and nice, the Farhan is reading out these nice poetic lines, etc. But what happened? You know, I'm like I'm a big crime thriller and crime procedural crime reader and consumer also. I watch and I read almost any good non-fiction, fiction, sorry, not non-fiction. So and I consume tons. So this closure thing, I still remember Lunchbox irritated me. Lovely movie, but the end irritated me. Why is it arty not to give closure? And then in some interview I read, she said that in Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, we ended on these three guys laughing into the face of in the second round. When they go to face the Bulls again. But for whatever reasons, I forget what feedback or something, she had to put in a song where they show all the couples singing, and so it tells the audience that this is what happened 6 months later or 1 year later or whatever. That uh, Leila married Arjun and this one that whatever. And she did this. I don't know how Luck by Chance ends. I'm not sure. Gully Boy also does Gully Boy have an open ending? I'm forgetting the thing.
Luck by Chance has a pretty
Close ending.
has good closure. Yeah,
Good.
yeah.
So these two, then I think this open ending thing. But I think all good filmmakers have a thing. They love to leave their audience wanting more.
That's true. Yeah, and I've spoken with some of the filmmakers on this podcast about that. The way that you end,
Uh-huh.
how
Uh-huh.
important it is to give it a
Uh-huh.
bookend ending, so to speak,
Uh-huh.
or to leave it open ended. And a lot of them say that sometimes it's the safe bet to go with an open ending, because then in your head you get the ending that you wanted.
Yeah.
So you can live with that, and then that makes you happy. And the person sitting next to you might have a different ending in his head, and he gets to live with that, and they can be happy with that. So that's one school of thought. And, it's debatable, how that works,
Yeah.
but that's one school of thought.
That's
But
true.
yeah, you said you wanted to talk about Pluto Mehra, so by all means,
Oh,
please.
I love that character. Yeah.
That is
And
tremendous.
the thing of making a lovely, what breed is he? I think he's a
He's a bulldog, no?
bulldog, na?
I think so. I think so.
Face like a bulldog. Face like a no, he's not a pug. Of course, he's too big to be a pug. No, so I'm not very good with figuring
Yeah,
out.
neither am I. Neither am I. I mean, if
But
probably, I'm sure one of
and
the listeners know like what
somebody in
exact
the
breed it is.
listening audience will. But I love the fact that they had a dog as a. It's like Saki's cat, which went to all the houses and saw. Uh, I love the fact. In fact, I have a little cat sitting here because we have a little cat outside in our house. So I love the fact that there's a dog who's a narrator and who's also a character, because Sunny had gifted her to Aisha, but Aisha's in-laws didn't want Pluto. So then Pluto had to stay with Kabir. And he's observing everything. And we assume that the animals don't have cognition the way we have. So it's very interesting to see that if this living being had cognition, this is what he would have observed. And I think it's super narrative tool to use. Superb
Absolutely.
narrative.
Absolutely. It's great narrative. It's just great characterization, and it's simply put, it's just good storytelling.
Good.
It's essentially having a narrator who's a dog, and
Mm.
and then Amir Khan's voice kind of lends it some weight to it. So,
Thankfully,
and
they didn't do Amitabh Bachchan. That would have become too much.
no, no, yeah,
He's everybody's favorite for narration.
yes, yes. But yeah, I mean, Pluto Mera is like something else. I mean, that was such a refreshing twist.
Yeah.
And it's not like, I mean, we haven't seen like, animal voiceovers or like pets being
Yeah.
narrators or anything like that. But I think in this context, because we look at Pluto as the normal, quote unquote, member of the Mera family. and he's the person, who's probably the most sorted among them. So he can see everything objectively and tell us about it. So it's just fascinating that Zoya and Rima thought about putting a dog in that character. It could have been just a narrator or a voiceover, but they decided no, this has to be a dog. And obviously then there's that link between Sunny and Aisha. So yeah, Pluto was great.
No, one of the things, it just hit me while we were talking. I said that Aisha is a favorite character, and Zoya clearly has female characters who hold their own, even if they are a little repressed like Aisha was, or like, um I'm forgetting Alia's character's name in Gully Boy, whose parents are pretty strict about stuff. But they hold their own and they have their own mind and they accept. And it is about women having their own agency. And you remember that scene where in the bar after Galla Gunia, which is a song I love, by the way. Um, we exercise a lot to that song and we dance a lot to that. It's one of the most fantastic
It's a long
dance.
take song, yeah.
It is lovely song. So, and kudos to the choreography. I don't know who's done it because you've got such a disparate cast and you've got all of them to groove to it and all of them get good camera time, and I like that about it. But coming back to the bar scene where he has this argument with Manav, and he says that you always say talking about women's issues and you're talking as if in our country women are repressed all the time. Look at Aisha, I allow her to work, I allow. And he immediately he says, when you allow her, when you say you allow her, you're putting yourself in the position of. So I think that conversation itself presents a perspective or a mirror to so many men, not just Indians, so many men, I mean, even to non-Indians they're watching, that it's not your business to allow or not allow her. So while I admire the fact that Zoya, and this is the point I wanted to make, that Zoya is very, her women and the characters, and in many films now, the thing about, I don't want to do this, I want to do this. And that thing of me, my want being important also is there. But I wish without being very patriarchal or without being misogynistic, could we do something equally about older people, about men? Stories built around, and the fact is, and this is why there's so many stories in my head, but what if our wants clash? If the woman, I'm perfectly happy with you doing your own thing, but when you do your own thing, it impedes my life. It impedes my ability to be happy and independent. And very often in a marriage or a friendship or a family relationship, that can happen. Mothers and children, bringing up children actually means that I have to give up my time. I do it happily and willingly. There's nothing wrong with that. But if there is conflict, how do you, and it could be equally in a couple, or it could be with a man. I feel that men are not celebrated for being men the way women are celebrated for being women. Maybe I speak as a boy's mother because I feel very often that uh, socially the chips are very loaded against men in many ways. I'm talking about people in our class. There are millions of women for whom the chips are completely loaded against them. But in our class, I feel the chips get a little loaded against the men, socially, legally, every which way. So sometimes you just wish, we train them better. And I think that training doesn't happen by telling them stuff, but for them to watch movies like Dil Dhadakne, those, where women are just doing their own thing. And I mean, my son has never watched anything which, if he watches something regressive, he knows this is regressive. So utna, he's only 15, but utna usko apne aap hai because of the media he's exposed to. But I'm saying if we could have movies which could go the other way also, and not just for men, for elderly people, for, so, which is that? There's a Jackie Shroff movie, Bidu something, yeah. Jackie Shroff and Nina Gupta, I'm forgetting.
Oh
Amazon.
yeah.
I saw
I
it.
just saw it recently. Yeah, I forgot the title too. It's a good movie. Yeah.
Okay, it's a nice, sweet little film.
Yes.
But it tackles this thing of older people having something to do, and they get their cheap thrills by just breaking and entering into a house, having a drink, and leaving. it's a city, it's cheap thrill thing. And how his son reacts, and I thought it was so sweet, because the moment people get old or they cross 50, 55, there's a sense of, some an ex-colleague or a friend said that when people get old, it's like she's an old woman, he's an old man. But there are stories there, and that person is, let's say, Himanshu or Vanita. That person is a person. When we are talking about pushing the emotional envelope, and because Zoya does these things, this is why this thought came, that I wish there were more stories which did this for other characters in our life also.
The
Push the
same thing,
envelope.
right. That's a great point. Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. And, I love that metaphor of the lifeboat versus the cruise ship.
Oh, yeah.
That's also nicely done.
That's
I
very
mean,
nice. I thought.
the cruise is this lavish, complete with all the comforts. But almost each of the Mera family member is constantly, caught between cross threads while on the cruise, dealing with something or other. And on the other hand, they're the happiest when they're in that lifeboat, when they're going to rescue Kabir. But just a basic raft, but they have got each other's back, all of them together. It's like a literal lifeboat.
Totally. It's a very good metaphor. I didn't think of that,
It's very nicely done. I mean, Zoya and Rima do these kind of little things so nicely, and they insert that. So I thought that was very nicely done.
You've seen Talash, Rima's film?
Yeah, of course. I love that film. My wife's favorite film, actually. Yeah.
I loved it. It upsets me at one level, but it's a lovely film.
Why do you say that?
No, that death of the...
Oh, yeah. Right. Upsets you in that way. Right. Got it.
Of the child, and,
yes,
so all of that.
Yeah. It's not an easy movie to watch. Yeah, that's for
like
sure.
Blood Diamonds. Superb film, but it disturbed me for 5 days.
Absolutely.
Just really upsetting to watch what they're doing to kids. And this is happening, by the way.
Yeah.
So, that way.
Yeah. Some movies, I mean, they're great movies, but they're not an easy watch. That's for sure. Where would you put this in terms of Zoya's filmography, in terms of if you were to rank her films?
Oh, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. But in Zoya's filmography, my all-time favorite is Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara.
Oh, really? Even more than Luck by Chance?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would say. I think Luck by Chance is a very good film, but I think she's found her voice more and more. And Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara was like a big this thing in her own voice also in many ways. Though she did it with men, so to be fair, it's about 3 men and them finding themselves in whatever way. But of course, you could say upper class, but the fact is, the same thing could happen to 3 guys.
Absolutely.
Or ST bus in Maharashtra also can discover themselves. So it's not. I see. My favorite is that, but I if you ask me what a bet, Luck by Chance is nice, but I don't know. Somehow I think that Luck by Chance का ना वो entertainment world में setting मुझे कुछ उतना मजा नहीं आता. Like Gully Boy, I still like. I liked Luck by Chance, a fine film. It's like...
It's interesting that you say that, because you have probably seen that world closely.
Yeah, and that is my problem. It's
so
like
you don't think it's that true?
It's very well done, actually. She's got that thing of staying in that Lokhandwala flats and that whole milieu. She's got it beautiful. There's no... I think I've seen Luck by Chance only a couple of times, to be very honest. Like Gully Boy, I've seen 2-3 times. But these two I've seen far more. Did she do anything after Gully Boy?
Yeah, she did Archie's, right?
I've seen Archie's. Yeah. Archie's was nice. It's a good one-time watch, but it's
I felt a bit disappointed. But I loved the dance and the singing and the dancing in that film.
I like the setting, actually.
Yes.
That little... But then they've justified it with some backstory or something,
Right. I think I expected a little bit more, so maybe that's why. And especially from Suhana as well. So,
It's all raw, yeah, Ravi. It's very rare to get a Nawazuddin kind of actor in first film.
Yeah.
Everybody goes through at least 4-5 films before they find their voice and, they sort of hit the right tempo. And Nawaz had to go through many bit roles before he hit his tempo. I think 10, 12,
Absolutely.
when, with a
Absolutely.
Kahani, with a Miss Lovely or whatever, he hit his tempo with those
Oh,
films.
yes. And
But
even
the
before
star
that, I mean, he
kids,
struggled a lot. Yeah.
and nobody was watching him. All these kids, everybody's watching them. So they never get the
That's a
space to
great point. Yeah.
hit
All
their
eyes are on
tempo.
them. Yeah.
All eyes are on them. Nobody knew Nawaz till 2014, 15, yeah. Really, mass media caught him after Bajrangi, I think. Till then, I mean, I first saw him in New York. He's a guy who's caught and he's questioned. And I remember thinking, who's this guy? And then I see him again in Kahani as that inspector. In Kahani, he's so hateful. You want to just shake him and slap him, but he gets your attention. But Nawaz had done like, I don't know what, 20, 25 films by then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he was in Black Friday, he was in Chal.
90s,
He did
he's
a
been,
lot of those films, yeah, during late
I've
90s.
interviewed him a couple of times. I mean, he's played extra in like so many films.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. He has struggled a lot. I mean,
Absolutely.
he has had a tough path. But yeah, okay. So I see. So you would put Zindagi
I
first.
would put Zindagi, but I know it'll irritate a lot of people, but I would put Zindagi.
No, that's a good film. One thing about Zindagi, I was not a big fan of that film when I watched it the first time. But few years ago, when I revisited that film, I thought, there's more to it than I thought before, and it's a much better film than I had first perceived it to be.
I
So
went the second time I saw that film twice in the theater. The second time I went with a friend, and she says, this is so typical of this I, me, myself generation. You're only worried about your problems, this, that. And I was like, no, why? But why is she saying this? This is such a beautiful film, this, that. But she's right. It was a very मेरी problem, मैं, And if you look at Dil Dhadakne, तो उसमें भी तुमको ऐसे ही लगेगा मेरी problem मैं. But when Farha says मेरी problem मैं अपना career follow, then you don't think that she should be taking care of her parents and she should. Why? Because she's lower class. But if you're upper class, then you sound spoiled when you're talking about your own needs. But when you're lower class, it's so even films reinforce these stereotypes in many ways, that the upper class need to. Zoya doesn't do it, but in many ways, and I think we also have this class difference in our. So if my help or someone of a slightly lower class in terms of income has some needs which we think, oh, kisko kya karne ka hai? Why does he need this? But if my kid had the same thing, we would be more indulgent. So that thing, I remember thinking about Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara and Dil Dhadakne Do. And I said, that's unfair. Just because you're rich does not mean you do not have the right to look for solutions to something that's been bothering you.
that's true. True. I agree with you. Great. No. That's all.
I
It's
was
all.
asking you, why do you need 1 hour? And here we are.
No. But thank you so much, Vanita. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
If you liked the episode, do consider supporting the show. Your support will help me continue creating content like this. You can find the link for supporting the show in the show notes and on the pod website. Also, do share this episode on Twitter, Insta, or Facebook. And do subscribe, rate, and review the pod wherever you listen to your pods. You can follow me on Twitter and Insta at loveofcinemasf8. Feel free to reach out there or by email with your comments, feedback, and suggestions. You can find my email in the show notes. That's the episode. This is Himanshu signing off. And as always, thank you for listening to the Love of Cinema podcast.